Hey there, Kingdom Dream Chasers. It is such a privilege to bring you another podcast episode. For those of you who don't know, I actually am starting recording video of the podcast for the first time today. So you're hearing my audio on the podcast, but if you go to my YouTube channel, we're going to start dropping these there as well. So exciting things coming. I have a team of people who help me do things that I would never do on my own. Okay. So let's talk about this podcast series that God has me doing. I think you're going to be really blessed by it. There's going to be 4 episodes through the Wednesdays in December. And I'm going to give you an overview of them, and then we're going to dive into the first episode. So, the theme, if you aren't already aware from maybe some of the show notes or the title of the episode, failing to plan is planning to fail. That quote is attributed to Benjamin Franklin, but apparently there's no real proof that he actually is the one that originated it with. So it's usually kind of put as anonymous. But let's talk about it for a moment. It's going to be the theme of this whole series. But so often we hear that and we think, oh, that sounds nice, right? Failing to plan is planning to fail. But we're going to really pull back and go into detail, looking at it from a kingdom perspective. What would God be saying to us about failing to plan? And what I want to point out to you is there's always more. There's always an opportunity to go deeper with Scripture, with our in our relationship with the Lord. By definition, God is a God of new. He's a God of fresh. He's never a God of I already said that. Now, he did already say many things, and we rely on Scripture. So don't hear what I'm not saying. He already said that in his word. However, he always wants to bring fresh and new. And we are very limited in our ability to understand all of God's mysteries. And so, in our yoking with him, he's going to bring fresh and new. So, when we look at failing to plan, is planning to fail. The first thing we're going to look at is let's take a reality check here. Why is it that we, knowing that if I fail to plan, I'm planning to fail, why is it I do it anyway? Why is it I don't make planning a priority? What is it that blocks me, keeps me, prevents me from stepping into planning? Because if I really believe the wisdom in the statement, planning, failing to plan equals planning to fail. I mean, who in their right mind sets themselves up to fail? Nobody in their right mind actively pursues a plan that is going to be a plan of failure. But yet, if we are not planning, then what we're doing is planning to fail. So we're going to look at that. That's number one. We're going to take a reality check on what does it mean when we don't plan? And why do we what is it that causes us to um, not plan? So that's number one. Number two, what is the motivation? What is that deeper motivation that comes for some people when they make that commitment and decision that they are going to plan? They're going to make the space, they're going to make the time, and they are going to plan. Where does that deeper motivation come from? Where is that deeper commitment and willingness to step into that planning? Where does it come from? So that's going to be the second episode in the series. And the third episode is all about actually creating the plan. Because here's what I want you to know. If the plan is not bigger than you, there's a very high likelihood that you will not pursue the plan. What do I mean by that? Well, if it's something like, I'm going to give you an example. If it's something like, I just want to pay the bills. So next year, looking ahead or looking at the next quarter or looking at the next month, my goal is just to hit this number because I will be able to pay the bills. All right. That's not bigger than you. That's something that you could probably accomplish without God. All right. And so, as kingdom entrepreneurs, if you want to step into a plan that is going to be impactful to others, that's going to be mission driven, that's going to be, and I don't care if you're impacting 10 people or 10,000 people. That doesn't matter. What matters is your heart's posture. Are you willing to do it with God? Because if you're going to do it with God, it's going to be bigger than you. All right. So that's number three. It's got to be bigger than you. And in so accepting that, we will start to create the plan in episode three. And then the last, you might be like, well, what could there possibly be after that? If we've created the plan together in episode three of this series, what could be after that? Working the plan. Yeah. How many times have you created a plan or set some goals, but actually created a plan to achieve those goals, but yet then somehow failed to work the plan? So not only are we going to talk about how to work the plan, we're going to talk about what are the most likely obstacles that are going to come up that will likely prevent you, after doing all of this work in creating the plan, actually prevent you from actually working the plan. So that's going to be a very important episode as well. So let's go ahead and jump into this reality check. All right. So I'm going to go back to our quote, Benjamin Franklin. If it was you, thank you. But you know what? Let's look to scripture. Many of you are probably familiar with Proverbs 29:18. People without purpose will perish. All right. So having a plan is purposeful, right? It's saying God is a God of the future, my future plan, meaning hope, right? When God talks about I have planned, Jeremiah 29:11, I have plans for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, give you a hope in the future. Let's look at that verse for a second when it comes to planning, because if we believe God when He says, Gail, I have plans for you, plans to prosper you. Now, as soon as we hear that, we think, oh, what does that mean? If God has plans to prosper me, what does that mean? Well, he quickly adds on, not to harm you. So he knows that prospering, that image of God prospering us is going to bring some fear, because our flesh will go, oh, well, what if I don't perform? What if I don't meet the expectations of God? What if God's plans for me? What if I fall short, right? And so he says, Gail, I have plans for you, but not to harm you. So harm is not, if we're doing it with God, positioned with him, the plans will not harm us, but they will, he goes on to tell us, give us a hope and a future. Well, how intricately linked those two things are, hope and future. How many of you, if you didn't believe you had a future, would have any hope? Right? Hope is intimately linked with our future. So let's go back. If I have a plan that I believe God is going to use to prosper me, I have hope for the future. So failing to plan is not just planning to fail. It's saying I don't believe God when he says he really has plans to prosper me. I'm too afraid to step into what that might look like. And here's the deal. The reality check is, as a coach, my job is to come along my clients and help them to see what they can't see. You can't read the label when you're inside the jar. You can't see what you're standing on. So what I want you to know is, please make sure you're seeking people in your life that are kingdom minded, going to steer your heart in the right direction, that want you to think bigger about what God has for you. Because if God's involved, girl, it's going to be bigger than you. And so the reality check is, if we're not willing to plan, what we're saying is, I'm allowing fear, I'm allowing um, busyness, I'm allowing circumstances, I'm allowing all of these other things to take priority over being intentional about what God has for me in the future when he says, I know the plans I have for you. And we go back to Proverbs 29:18. If we don't have a sense of purpose, a sense of future movement and commitment, we start to perish. What does that mean? Our hopes perish, our dreams start perishing, our belief in God working with us starts to perish. All right. And we start to live in this place of just staying busy to avoid feelings of inadequacy, feelings of um, the performance that I'm not meeting a certain standard that either I believe God has put on me or I've put on myself or my spouse has put on me, right? And so all of these things keep us from planning because we don't want to be confronted with the reality that we may come up short. All right. But as kingdom women, we say, no, not anymore will I listen to that lie. I will step into the truth that God is who he says he is. I am who he says I am, which means I'm a child of God, I'm a daughter of the king, and he wants to do this with me. And so I will make space and time for what God has for me. And I'm going to wrap up with this in our first episode. Your reality check. The reality check is please spend at least 5 minutes when you get off this episode saying, what am I afraid of? What am I? Why won't I make time and space to plan, to be reflective about 2023 and to make plans for 2024 in my business? What are the fears? Write them down, call them out. Okay. And then in so doing, what you're saying is, I will not stand on these fears anymore. I will put them down on paper or speak them out loud so that they are exposed for the lies that they are. And I instead will make time and space for taking inventory of 23 and looking ahead to plan for 2024. I have a gift for you. If you're watching this in real time, on Monday, so in 6 days, the countdown is on. I am holding my first challenge that is dedicated to this exact conversation, making space to reflect on what 2023, the wins and the opportunities that 2023 are currently presenting, and looking ahead to 2024 and how to plan. So that challenge is next week. It's the position to prosper. We're going to get positioned to prosper for 2024. So if you are listening to this and you're not registered, I'm telling you, this is your opportunity to say, I will make time and space to look back and take business inventory from 2023, and I will look ahead to making a plan for 2024. And I will do it from a kingdom perspective. If you already have the tools to do that on your own, beautiful. Do it. If you don't, that is my gift to you next week. It's only $7. It's the best $7 you're going to spend. I highly recommend you get in the backstage for only $47, where you're going to get live real-time coaching from me on these subjects. What I want for you is for you not to go into 2024 on a wing and a prayer, hoping for the best like you did this year. All right. So we want that to stop. Do not allow the busyness of the holiday season to tell you the lie that you don't have time and space to be reflective about 23 and make a plan for 2024, because you are a daughter of the king and you have more than enough time to pause with the Lord, be reflective, and make a plan for 2024.